Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of Words on Whisky, brought to you by Irish Whisky Magazine. We're delighted you're here to join us. We have a very special guest, probably the talk of the country at the moment in terms of whisky, certainly. So we're joined by Mark Reynier. But kicking off, what we'll do is we'll start by looking at the news. But in case you're interested in supporting the channel and you'd like to subscribe to our magazine, Irish Whisky Magazine is available online on our website, irishwhiskymagazine.com, and we'd be delighted if you would subscribe. We think it's a great value and a great read, so thank you for that. Going on to the news then, one of the big changes in the industry is that the LVA and the Vintners Association have called for a reduction of VAT down to 9% to help with the struggling industry at the moment. 22,000 jobs, 7,000 bars, all affected by what's happening now with the COVID issue at the moment. So we're glad to see they're opening, and we hope they're keeping safe. In terms of distilleries, a large number of distilleries have opened. So we had Teeling open, we had Pierce Lyons, we had Powerscourt, a number of others. And this week, on Monday, the distilleries are opening for Jameson in the Jameson Business Centre in Dublin and in Middleton as well. So starting from Monday. In terms of releases then, we've a number of new releases that have been out. In fact, probably not so many. The main release really, and we'll talk to Mark more about these, is the release of the 4 releases from Waterford. So single farm origin releases, 2 brand new batches, Ballymorgan and Sheestown, batch 1.1, and then batch 1.2 of Bannow Island and Ballykilcarvan. So Ballykilcarvan. So there'll be ones to watch out for, and hopefully there'll be enough for everybody this time. I know they went very, very quickly last time. So we'll ask Mark about those and other things that are coming in the future. So as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. We'll be delighted to put any of your questions to Mark. And from Islay, where Mark is at the moment, we're going to bring him in now and see how he is. Mark. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining.
Good evening to you.
Great to catch you.
Yeah, and you.
So we tried the connection a little bit earlier, and we were having some issues over. We know that you're on a satellite link for Wi-Fi. How are things out in Islay? Are things very quiet now with all the COVID restrictions?
well, not really. Life carries on as normal. I mean, I think someone said that social distancing and farming. I mean,
yes, hand in hand.
What's the difference?
Hand in hand.
Yeah. So no, it's life's as usual. I'm looking out across the North Channel to Ireland. I can see it from here. It's about 25 miles away.
Okay.
But I have a house here. After.
It's not raining then.
Well, no, it's been really dry. It's been as you know. I mean, you get the same weather as you do. It just a few minutes later. So no, it's been very dry, very sunny. It's been glorious. Great spring.
Well, you could send some this way, I think, because it's been raining for the last 2 days completely. So
we needed
the first things first. Congratulations on what's been a phenomenal release of the first 3 batches. Of your whiskey.
Thank you.
You must be
Thank
over the moon, and you wish you had more.
Well, we do have more.
Have more.
I can assure you of that. Yes, of course, a huge release for everybody involved. We've been doing this, since December 2014, and it's theory and then putting it into action, and we're living with it on a day-to-day basis, and it's just a huge relief to be able to say, look, here you go, guys, this is it. This is what we've been talking about all this time. It is. On the one hand, you're massively proud that you've given birth to this little baby.
Sure.
That, with any luck, it's going to be, all around the world, enjoyed by people in every corner. And we can say, well, we did that. There's a huge satisfaction in that. That, the momentousness of that moment. Mm-hmm. But it's also, it's that relief, that you can actually get it out there and people can share. It's not just words anymore. You can share, in it, and understand what we've been banging on about.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'm going to do in celebration is join you in a glass if you're going to have one. I've got the Bano Island here.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Great minds. So, obviously, the packaging is quite unique. What's the thought process behind that?
Watch this. Watch the whiskey. Oh, sorry, you've got a bit of an engraving there, which doesn't help. Let me just show you this. Look, watch.
Oh, yes.
Can you see that? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Swirling around?
Yeah.
That is the wonder of natural whiskey.
So no colouring?
That is the wonder.
No colouring? No. 50%?
Yeah, and look how it separates out. It separates out.
Yeah,
it separates out. Yeah. It's the joy of natural whiskey. Add some water with it, however much you want. It's up to you.
Yeah.
A teardrop is the minimum. You must do it. Forget all this bollocks about oh no, I don't have water with my whiskey. This is natural whiskey, and if you don't add a teardrop, you're losing out. Yeah. There's a reaction that goes on with the water and the flavor compounds, as well as with the air. So do please feel free, and ideally it's unchlorinated water, ideally. And how much you add is up to you. It's your mood, how you feel. It's entirely up to you. I tend to add more water at the beginning of the evening, and then less at the evening, at the end of the evening. But that's the thing. And don't swill the glass around. It's a common mistake. It's not a wine. The flavor elements are much more volatile, and you'll just throw them away. Right. So the wine, keep the glass relatively steady, and just smell, and just keep coming back, and you'll see it change as all the different flavor compounds are released bit by bit by bit. That's the joy of natural whiskey.
I mean, one of the ironies about these whiskies, and if
Slant.
anybody sludger, one of the ironies is that if somebody was expecting a heavy, oily, very full-bodied whiskey, they're going to be in for a surprise. And if you think predominantly that you are actually distilling in a brewery, which would probably be, beer drinkers are more synonymous, I suppose, with heavy, oily, maybe even peated whiskies. The fact that this is light, floral, fruity, is probably a bit of a surprise to people. Although, if they knew your Bruichladdich range,
well, why? I mean, Ned, our head distiller, our spirit man, our spirit guru. He came to me at the beginning. He said, "Well, what is Waterford? What are we looking for?"
Yeah.
Which is a perfectly reasonable question. And I said, well, actually, we're not looking for anything. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You're letting it talk. And what we're doing is we're letting the barley talk. So everything we do is to let that barley forwardness come through. Right. Now, the weight of the spirit is influenced by the still shape. Sure. If you think about the neck of a still, and the body of the still. If you think about this far up, still shapes have changed.
Yeah.
Over the years, if you go back 150 years ago, they were much shorter because they were shoehorned into stables, and then as distilleries were instead of being farm distilleries or clandestine, they were made into proper commercial distilleries. The stills got bigger, and then the distilleries got built round the stills.
Right.
And the evolution, the change of shape of still progressed to make purer spirit. Sure. So if you go back to some of the Lefroy, for example, on Islay,
yes,
they have kept the same shape of still since 1815. So the spirit is a much more dense, heavy spirit. Yeah. Whereas Bruichladdich was built, 60, 70 years later, and the guys had a different idea. They said, well, no, we're going to have a really tall still because we've got all the space in the world. We're going to build a distillery around it, not shoehorn it into a shed. Yeah. So the spirit is much more, literally, more refined.
Yes.
The reflux is far greater. Yeah. Yeah. So the spirit ends up being pure. And wind the clock forward to 1972, when the stills for Inverleven were built in Glasgow.
These are interleaving stills that are in Waterford at the moment.
We stole them from
those.
Yeah.
You want to share it with us, or do you want to talk about
how long
they
got?
Were salvaged?
Salvage. That's a good word. Salvaged. They were salvaged from Dumbarton Distillery, a huge Hiram Walker site on the banks of the River Clyde, and we were tipped off by a marvelous guy called Demolition Dave, who was hired to demolish the whole site, turn it into housing.
Yeah.
And he knew what we were doing on Islay, and he said, "Look, if you need any spare parts or whatever, go and help yourself." And no, not many people knew that there was in this huge complex a little small single malt distillery, vertically shoehorned in amongst the other buildings. And so that it was a bit like the borrowers. Everybody got sent down. Anybody could wield a screwdriver or a spanner went down. We basically unbolted anything that moved and used them as spare parts for the distillery for the next decade. But of course, in amongst it were 3 stills. One, an experimental Lohmann still, which we used to make gin.
There's the stills.
Oh yeah, and then the two from Inverleven, which we shipped to Bruichladdich with a view to using them. Never did. Yeah. So when this Waterford project started, the great thing was I knew where I could get my stills. Now, what that means is you've got an idea already of the style of or rather, should I say, the weight of the spirit. I knew that the spirit would be wouldn't be a heavy, iodine-y, powerful, intense spirit. It would be a much more elegant spirit, thanks to those evolution of those stills. So then it's a question of, well, what do you put through it? And the flavor we all know, and it's it still surprises me that barley is such an integral ingredient here. I mean, there's only 3 ingredients to malt whiskey, and that's barley, yeast, and water. At least that's all it should be. And so why are we not paying attention to the barley? That's where all the flavor compounds are. It's what makes single malt whiskey. Yeah. It's where the whiskey-ness comes from for blended whiskey. Yeah. It's that intensity of flavor that makes single malt whiskey the most flavor complex spirit in the world. End of story.
And you've made it more complicated because you're dealing with, I don't know, how many farmers are you dealing with now?
Well, 40, but the first premise is you've got to understand that that's where the flavor is. So if that's where the flavor is, if that's what whiskey is, if that's where, well, let's pay some attention to it. So on Islay, I was able, after a fashion, to implement these ideas of surely like the vine, influenced by a microclimate and a soil and topography. Surely that should be the same for any other crop, any other fruit, any other cereal. We see it with eau de vie. We see it with, gardeners know that soil will impact where plants grow better. If you've got an acidic soil, you can grow fuchsias, but you can't grow fuchsias in alkaline. Or roses have to be on a south-facing wall. And this is terroir. This is gardening.
Yeah,
we call it gardening.
We'll come back. We'll come back and touch on terroir in more detail. Just going back to your background, you spent you grew up in a wine family, a wine merchant.
Yeah.
And 20 years in the wine business and 20 years in the whiskey business. Which have you preferred?
More or less. Exactly. Well, not more or less. Exactly. It's exactly 2020. No, it is. 20 years in wine, 20 years in whiskey. This year, it's exactly half and half.
Okay.
So it gives me a very different. Well, which do I enjoy most?
Yes.
Well, that's a very interesting point. Which do I enjoy most? Culturally, wine is in my blood.
Yeah.
I grew up. I've owned a Grand Cru vineyard. I've made wine. I've bottled wine, labeled it, shipped it, wholesaled it, retailed it, and then I've retailed whiskey, wholesaled whiskey, bottled whiskey, distilled whiskey, grown barley. So I've done total immersion in both spheres.
Yeah.
Now, one sphere is controlled by a duopoly, pretty much. Pernod and Diageo. 60% of whiskey in Scotland comes from those two companies. 80% from 5 companies. Well, there's 110 distilleries in Scotland. There's 5,000 chateaus in Bordeaux. So the scale is so different. I grew up understanding, instead of the great chateaus of Bordeaux, it was the farmers of Burgundy, much more parcellated, much more complex.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned about wood, about experimenting with wood, experimenting with organics or with biodynamics, with all these things. That's where I learned it all, as these new generation of younger French wine makers rediscovered the terroir that they'd lost after the war, thanks to cooperatives and a run of appalling vintages and the lack of investment, the lack of everything. But I was there, so I witnessed this change, and that is what I'm applying to barley. And I tried it on Islay with varying degrees of success. I had a lot of baggage to pull behind me, a lot of reticence, a lot of people that didn't want me to do it, and it was not traditional, and who was I to come up with this? And it was puffy, poncy, southern thing. So there was a lot of we didn't have the logistics, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have amongst my colleagues the will to do it.
Yeah.
So we tried, and but we were able to demonstrate. I was able to show that barley grown on one field and barley grown on another produced a spirit, once it was malted and distilled exactly the same way, that were different characteristics.
Have you bet the house on there being a difference?
No, because I showed it on Ireland. I knew it. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work it out. As I said, gardeners call it gardening, farmers call it farming. This word terroir is such a loaded word, because to some it's some fancy French sophisticated poncy thing. To others, it's earth, and it's really very, very straightforward. So the trouble is, the word terroir does not have a direct English translation, let alone a Gaelic one. So therefore, it's open to all sorts of misinterpretation, and it will be. Believe me, it will be completely corrupted by the time that the big guys get hold of it, which they will. but no, as a concept, it's nothing startling, nothing
In terms of,
at all.
I mean, it's of no surprise to me that certainly terroir makes a difference. But in the bigger picture, you know, if you take all the factors, so you take maturation, the wood, the distillation, cup points, every other factor, how much of a factor is the terroir? Can it be quantified?
Total.
So
we proved it. We've shown it. We demonstrated it. And a paper that we've been working on with Cork University and Dr. Macaulay and Scotland's leading whiskey spirit analyst, Dr. Harry Rifkin, and Minch Malt, and Dr. Dustin Herb at the Oregon University. Now, I wanted to prove, because you don't have to believe me. I know what I'm talking about on this subject, but I know that there's going to be people that go say, well, there's no scientific evidence to prove that terroir exists, because those are the same slings and arrows that were thrown at me in Scotland with Bruichladdich. So we've set out to prove it once and for all. And so we've done a 3-year study to prove whether terroir exists. The French never bothered to prove it. They just take it for granted. Medieval monks have observed over 1,000 years, that it exists. It's been enshrined in law. But there's people that say, no, it can't possibly exist, for any other plant other than which is absolute nonsense. So we've had to prove it, and we have. And the results will be published in the autumn. And I can give you a little tip here. Funnily enough, it does prove that terroir exists.
Well, look, I mean, you've stuck to your guns on this from day one in Bruichladdich and now in Waterford.
Well, you're saying, but what you're saying is, what you're implying is that, there's some debate about it. Well, there isn't. There is no debate about it. It's what the debate is. From people that don't want to accept that terroir exists, because it might be embarrassing for them to explain why and how they get their barley and what they do with it, is the what I call the defense is that it can't possibly have any effect on the spirit, because we do so many nasty things to that spirit to bring it about. This is the thing. Whilst people, well, it may affect the farm. Yes, you may be right there, but by the time it's been malted and it's been drowned and it's been dried and then it's been fermented and then it's been boiled and it's all these terrible things. There's no way that any of the influences from that barley can possibly come through into the spirit. That's the real we've debate.
Seen that, and you sent a couple of samples last time of new make spirit.
Yeah,
and certainly, sure. If anybody thinks there's no difference between those two, they're on another planet. But but the criticism will be, but you made them different. That's the point. But you've made them different. You've changed the cut. You've done this. You've done that. So that's why they're different. Well, no, because part of what we're doing, part of this project is that, again, knowing where that criticism is going to come from, we set out this project to prove that terroir exists. So terroir is fine. You don't have to believe me, but I have to prove to you that it exists. So we set up this traceability system that my good colleague Kian has designed, that brings together all the different parts, from the farmer, from the maltings, to the distillery, fermentation, distillation, to the wood, so that we can prove that this terroir has been kept separate all the way through. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, it's no use just having the proof. We have to be able to show it. Yes. We have to demonstrate it. So we have to have the transparency to show what we're doing. Now,
it doesn't come much more transparent than having a terroir code on the bottle there.
Well, congratulations on that, actually, because the
but
information that is available is second to none. It's actually a change for the industry.
And you've seen nothing yet. You've seen nothing yet. That's just a beta version. We've got so much more. We're just working out how we can present it in a way that is user-friendly and visually useful. And also on an academic level, that you can take it even further. So we call it the 3 T's. It's terroir. It's no use having just terroir, but you've got to have traceability to prove it, and you've got to have transparency to show it.
Sure.
And so that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, very good. Look, Bruichladdich, you started that up in 2000, and that was something that very nearly didn't happen. I mean, you had last-minute finances came into play there, and you just about got it going, and then it came to a bit of a sad and abrupt end, if you like. I know it was sold for 54 million and bought over by, was it Remy Martin? And actually, one of the directors, John Marie, is actually on your board at the moment of Waterford, which is a bit of an irony. I mean, obviously that must have hurt. That must have hurt the way Bruichladdich came to an end.
Oh, it did, because there was unfinished business.
Yeah.
And this is what we've done here in Waterford is the unfinished business.
Yeah.
This was a project that I thought we'd set up Bruichladdich in a way that was like a perfect capital business, where we had very happy shareholders, very private shareholders who really liked what we were doing, and a crew of people that we were finally seeing what we were trying to achieve. Everything was coming together. It's a different project. I try and explain this to people. Waterford is only half of that Bruichladdich project. It's the second half of Bruichladdich.
Okay.
The first half was we bought an old Victorian distillery with 1 million litres of whiskey going back to 1964. And we had to trade that whiskey, create a brand, and sell the whiskey to buy barley to distill the way that I wanted to do it. And that was the model we put forward. And it was a lot harder getting those sales, getting that off the ground, distilling enough. And by the time 12 years later, when Remy Cointreau came along, and the ideal company to be the owner of Bruichladdich as a guardian to take it on to the next level, don't doubt me there. It's without doubt the right people. But it was a disappointment in that my colleagues had, we'd all agreed, a matter of weeks beforehand, that we were all aligned and still going, and more to do, and I sort of got dumped in it by in one of these awful extra board meetings where.
Well, it was a £54 million deal, though, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. So like one or two of my colleagues rather that than carrying on, and I found that disappointing. And some very good close friends of mine, hung me out to dry, basically. And well, fine, okay, that's life, and it makes you a little bit more resilient. But so I was resolved to finish the business, the unfinished business, and that's what we've done in Bruichladdich. It's part 2 of Bruichladdich, the bit that I really wanted to do, unencumbered, with my colleagues in Waterford, and the exuberance and the desire to succeed and the alacrity with which we've been able to do this. It's been marvelous. There's been no baggage. It's been a clear sheet of paper. We've been able to do everything that I wanted to do. There is nothing that now I can look back and say, is there anything we could have done better? No, it's perfect. Everything we wanted to do, we've done.
So how did it come about? How did you actually discover there was a brewery for sale? a brewery that was closed, a former Guinness brewery. It's a very industrial unit. If anybody's ever been down there, I really encourage. It's not a glamorous site. But it's highly automated, a very technical site, and huge room for expansion.
Well, it's not so much the expansion side of it. What happened was after the acquisition by Remy Cointreau, I was sort of wanting to do something, and I looked around in Scotland for something to do, and I couldn't find anything that sort of particularly interested me. So I look across to Ireland. You think, well, 8 years ago, there wasn't much going on.
Yeah.
Why not do that? Something there. But the catalyst was a lovely man here on Islay called Duncan McGilvray, who was the engineer at Bruichladdich. And your life you come across, your paths cross with various people. And I can think of probably 5 people in my life, paths have crossed, where your life has been enriched, enhanced by meeting somebody.
Yeah.
And this is one of those people. We just hit it off. I loved it. Right. And he, sadly, he died a couple of months ago. Oh. But he was the guy that told me about Irish barley. That in all the years he'd Bruichladdich, since the 60s, the best barley he had ever seen came from Ireland. Yeah. Coincidentally, from Waterford, exported.
We're not going to argue with that. We're not going to argue with that.
No, but that's really important, because if barley is important to you, well, where do you go? You follow the barley. So that was the drive to come to Ireland. Yeah. Then the thing was, where are we going to do it? And I remember reading this thing about Diageo retrenching back to Dublin and closing down 5 Guinness breweries around Europe. Yeah. So you think, well, okay, well, that's a redundant brewery. Brewing is 2/3 of distilling. If brewing is all the stainless steel, I've got the copper, and put the two together, and we've got a distillery. Yeah. So that was the essence of it. So Waterford, well, there we are. This extraordinary building, built in 2004. Funnily enough, the same year we were raiding Dumbarton, for the Inverleven stills. Yeah. The same year, that building on the right was being built at the tune of 40 million euros, only to be shut down a decade later. So
you retained quite a lot of the staff as well, haven't you?
Well, but that's that. If guys work there, they know how it all works together. It made a lot of sense to get them going again. So it's a bit like sort of the 7. What's that film? No, bringing back getting everybody back together again. For one final go. But of course, what's there is all this extraordinary modern equipment that you would never find in a distillery. Yeah. All for brewing, state of the art. So it was a question of repurposing this machinery for our project. Yeah. So we got a couple of secret things, like for example, we got a mash filter instead of a mash, which was for brewing efficiency. But if you repurpose it, it's actually the ultimate terroir extractor for extracting every last ounce drop of flavor out of that barley when we mash it prior to fermenting it, prior to distilling it. So it's a very fortuitous. And I'm not saying I knew that this would be the case. It's something we discovered as we went along. Yeah. But yeah, we've got some very fancy kit.
So it was almost exactly a year and 4 days from the purchase to the actual distillery.
A year and a day. Yeah.
A year and a day. So, and
10th of December.
And it was your son Rory that turned on the tap again.
Yeah. He's making a habit. For the second time. The first time he was 6 months old with Duncan McGilvray. And so it was an honor for him to be able to do it again with Paul this time at Bruichladdich, this time as a 17-year-old. So yeah.
But he's of drinking age now, so he can enjoy it.
I
have a lot of questions here for you, Mark. An awful lot. There's a lot
far
of
away,
interest.
far away, man, far away.
Whiskey Jason from America has come in and he said, when will the VDN casks be more specific declared on the bottles?
They won't. VDN is like it's our own word for it. It's French. Vin du naturel, natural sweet wine, and it's a name given to fortified sweet wines.
Sure.
Now, fortified sweet wines, well, that includes sherry, port, Madeira, but also some smaller appellations on the north side of the Pyrenees, like Banyuls, Riesalt, Morey, that do the same thing. Different grape, but the same principle. So we just call fortified wines casks VDN, because you can't rely on sherry barrels anymore, not since 1988. And of course, port and all these things are bottled at source. So the barrels just aren't around. Contrary to what people would like you to believe, real, genuine sherry barrels are very hard to find. They have to be extracted from the Solera system. They are not widely available as people would like you to believe. So VDN is our own internal shorthand for sweet wine casks, from which, if we put new spirit in there, the alcohol will extract that sucrosity, and for us, that is a natural sweetener, so to speak. The corollary of that is, of course, using virgin oak, both French and American, for color, because that's what comes. The lignins, tannins, and vanillins are extracted from virgin oak, not from first fill.
Okay. Just another question then is, how many single farm releases will there be before the core range is introduced?
There will never be a core range. Single farms are a stepping stone. It's not, Terroir farms, single farm is a stepping stone to the goal. The goal is what we call a cuvée, an assemblage of those single farms. So if you take a single farm with its own flavor identity, I'll see if I can find you a graphic to show you what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, here we go. Right. This is, well, this may be a bit more detail than your guys want to hear, but that. Ooh, can you see that? That is one terroir. 3 years of it. So the colors, you see a little bit of blue, a bit of green. Those are 3 different harvests. So you can see that already we can demonstrate there is a harvest difference between one terroir. Okay.
Yeah.
But look at the shape. I'm surprised
the difference is so small.
Look, but look at the shape. Okay, look at the shape there. If I advance to another shape, look. Yeah. Totally different shape. But again, 3 different harvest differences. If I do it again, here's another one. Okay. Yeah. A different shape again. Now, that's flavor derived and analyzed through gas chromatography, mass spectral gas chromatography, the very, very latest. Yeah. Which identifies what those flavor compounds are, because we can use the olfactory side of it to identify not only what is chemically registered, but actually what it does. So this is the very, very latest. If we then stack those 3 terroirs together, we get this. Okay. Ooh, yeah. Sorry, no, missed it. There you go. You get that.
All right.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
That is flavor complexity. You see the overlap? And that's what the project's about. That if each of those single farms has its own flavor identity,
Yeah.
if you then stack them on top of each other, you create mind fuckery. You commit complete, and that's the aim is to have ultimate complexity.
Yeah.
It's not new. It's borrowed from the wine world. It's what the grand chateaux of Bordeaux do. It's what the top champagne houses do. That's where the influence comes from.
Yeah.
Is to create that complexity. So if you take your Bannow Island, if you take your Rathian, if you take your Ballykilcavan, and you put a little bit of each in a glass, that's when you'll see what we're up and what we're all about. That's where you'll see the aim, the ultimate aim, is the sum of the parts being even greater than the individual components.
Yeah. Well, tell me, one of the things that is asked is all the barley that is used at the moment is all Irish. It's all from local farmers. It's all identifiable. It's all traceable. Minch must have a nightmare of a time handling all those different ones. You've got a very capable partner, a very capable partner in that.
We do. And they rose to the challenge from day one. They did not flinch. They could see that this was something new, something different, and they had the balls to go with it. And I really take my hat off to them, and the Dalton brothers in particular, who really rose to the challenge, because this all revolves around logistics. You've got to have the logistics to be able to make it happen, and that meant we needed an entrepot to park the barley in.
Is this the cathedral separate. You refer to?
Correct.
Right,
correct.
Okay.
Because it's got like a religious significance. You go there, it's like, wow, and the Dalton brothers immediately built, they got, right, we understand what you're doing. This is not a problem. And they built this thing just in time for the first 2015 harvest, just by the nick of time, so that we could then park these 130 tons of barley per farm. Because if you think about it, the harvest time throughout Ireland is about 3 weeks. We got 5,000 tons, 3 lorries per farm, winging its way around all these country lanes, and we've got to get it dried because it will rot if we don't, and we've got to get it, binned away so that we don't confuse it with any of the others.
Is there anything different in the drying? I mean, what moisture levels do you bring down the barley to? Are they different per farm? Or
Well, you just go outside. If it's raining, it's going to be bloody wet, isn't it? So it's whatever the natural humidity is, and we have to bring it down to 12% moisture, so that it can then be stored without rotting. And it has to be stored on air, the air vents underneath, to keep it sort of aerated. So it was a very clever design, and that is the key to being able to keep it all separate. So this project, relies on an awful lot of people who, the first bottling we made, commemorative bottling, the pilgrimage bottling, 1,500 bottles, but we worked out that 500 people have helped us get this far. It's taken 500 people to get this far. So we're going to give a bottle to each of them.
I know there's going to be a queue down to Waterford this weekend, because I think it's the 11th that people go and collect their bottles. So it's going to be a little bit of a traffic jam down from my side anyway, going down to Waterford. So
a walkthrough to collect those bottles. And we thank everybody for being so patient. We planned a great weekend. It was going to be a real sort of hoolie down at the distillery. That got kiboshed, and so we thought, how do we get? We didn't just want to send the bottles out to people. That just seemed to defeat the object. We wanted people to come to the distillery. That was the whole point of pilgrimage, a pilgrimage to the distillery. So this is the only way we could think about doing it, where people could actually just drive through, collect the bottle, collect a couple of samples that they would have drunk on site at the time, and we'll have a hoolie in September. We'll have a hoolie on the 5th of September.
Yeah, we're looking to actually. Your friend John Malios is on in Greece. And
Greece. Hello, man. Hi.
Yeah, he's coming down to visit you on the 18th. So.
Good.
September.
All right. Well,
so,
thank you.
Send
me an email. Remind me. Yeah.
A lot of questions. Look, Mark, I mean, there's no doubt you are regarded somewhat as a maverick and a renegade, as your rum is named after. What is it? I mean, do you see yourself as that? Do you deliberately go out to try and change the status quo, or you just want to do things differently? Or is it your experience that leads you, maybe an element of self-belief that says, right, I want to do it my way? What is it that makes, I mean, even from the packaging to the marketing message to the whiskey to how you do work, what is it that makes you want to do things differently?
Well, Christ, it was a bit of all of those things. The arrogance to think that I can do it better than anybody else. Yeah, sure, I don't deny that. I think it's my background, as I've explained, in wine, where I've seen it, I've lived it, I've done it. This isn't just theory, you know. It's you know, I've paid my dues. You know, in whiskey, likewise, you know, I started at that, you know, the independent bottler end, and I worked my way up. So you know, I've paid my dues. It's experience. Secondly, thirdly, I suppose, is seeing, you know, in any industry that's dominated by 5 companies, you know, it's not a good thing, is it? You know, surely there's ways you can do things better. You know, it is our national drink after all. It is made from barley. We grow barley. You know, what's not to like? So yes, it is. You know, and going against the grain certainly, you know, is what I was brought up to understand. You know, being a Burgundy wine fanatic as opposed to Bordeaux and all that sort of stuff. So yes, you know, I've always sort of been, you know, it's been, you know, completely made clear to me that, you know, flavor. I mean, in our household, Sunday lunch, you know, people don't believe me, but Sunday lunch, we weren't allowed as kids to start eating until we'd identified what the wine was in the decanter.
Okay.
So. Now, you know, clearly you got used to eating cold food, but what it made you do was pay attention.
Yeah.
Smell, nose, and this is what tasting is all about. Is nose. You know, 90% of any, you know, anything you drink or eat, it's the smell that your brain picks up. And of course, you know, okay, it wasn't. It's a questions and answers, you know, idea, but sort of, you know, you'd get there in the end. Yeah. But it was a great discipline, and I thank my father fantastically for that. I think it's the greatest thing he ever did for me.
Were you like that as a child? Were you contrary? Were you difficult? Is it just
where are you going with this?
No, I'm just trying to understand how.
Excuse me.
Well, okay. Well, let's go back and say, at one point, for example, there was a whole debate about whether Waterford whiskey would be with the E or not with the E, and that, you know, caused.
Oh, that's a simple one. That's a simple one. That's a very simple one to answer. Is I wanted to, you know, I wanted to make sure that this was not comparable to other whiskies or whiskey, full stop. You know, I wanted people to look at it as a completely different thing in its own right. So the first differentiation is to differentiate it from the rest of Irish whiskey. And the second thing is, you know, is to put it in a packaging that, you know, people don't associate with whiskey, so that you look at it freshly and go, well, hey, what's this? You know, questioning, intrigue is what it's about, as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's not stating the bleeding obvious. You know, there's plenty of whiskey around for that.
Yeah.
No, this is for people that are a bit more curious, a bit more intrigued. They want to know a bit more, and so therefore you've got to stand out from that rest of these people because you're doing something that's different from the rest of these people. It's very simple.
At the moment, what you're doing differently, mostly, and I won't say one of the, is highlighting the terroir. At some point, as you said, that will be hijacked and turned into something else. What else have you got down the line?
What else we got down the line? Well, there's obviously, again, it all goes back to barley. I've given you a clue already, but organic barley. I was there when the organic wine movement started, and I don't mean any of these things. Whether it's craft or any of these terms are often a bit of a smokescreen. It doesn't necessarily mean that an organic wine or a craft beer is actually any better than anything else. It normally does, but it doesn't. But it's not by default. You can still get a crap brewer, calling himself craft, just as an expert, fantastic brewer.
Yeah, I mean, craft doesn't give the.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't bestow automatic, quality. But I learned, over the years in wine, that if you are a really good winemaker, if you are a fastidious farmer, one of the steps that some guys can do because they're lucky enough to have the right conditions and the right sort of microclimate, they're able to grow their crops without using, the standard treatments that are available to farmers.
Yeah, I mean, we visited Trevor Harris, and so the biodynamic.
Well, that's taking a step further, which is biodynamics.
Amazing,
and everybody, when biodynamics started, wine-wise, really in the late 80s, 90s, everybody thought, they're barking mad, in complete sort of tree-hugging, madness.
Yeah.
Now, all the top chateaus in France are biodynamic. They don't talk about it, but they are. If you take the top 20 greatest winemakers in the world, 17 of them are biodynamically run. It's a way of life. It's a philosophy. If you're trying to make the very, 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 very best, one thing is in the cellar, the other is in the field. Yeah. So Trevor Harris was the first guy that rose to the challenge when I asked, can anybody grow me some biodynamic barley? And to his credit, he stepped up and did it.
I have to say,
and the result is extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, I may not have been a believer completely, but standing in a field and the field beside him is a non-biodynamic, and his field biodynamic, it's just obvious, even from the strength of the stems, the height of the stems, the difference was phenomenal.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah,
but then there it goes, Sergio. All biodynamics is taking farming back to the pre-agrochemical industry. It's basically 50,000 years of farming know-how encapsulated in a code of conduct. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's if you go back 1,000 years and you're a farmer, you couldn't exactly nip down to your local farmer's market to buy a whole load of fertilizer, insecticide, pesticide. You had to make do with what you had.
Yeah.
So it's not
true enough.
It's not.
Nick McGuire has a question in here. He's saying, how do you actually pick the farmers?
Oh, well, that's quite interesting. Well, the first 40 were picked by Minch Malt,
okay.
And they were inevitably some of the wilier, older farmers. They're better farmers, more successful. And over the years, it's been quite interesting to see how the average age has fallen.
Yeah.
As some of the older guys go, well, it's a bit more hassle than I thought, and the younger guys have come through and say, well, actually, I really get what you're doing. I want to be involved. Yeah. So it's a bit like a Premier League. We've had relegations and promotions, and some guys that didn't quite cut the mustard. It was a little bit too difficult. Their soils weren't really suitable to this sort of project. So it's been a learning curve, and what I'm really pleased to see is a lot of young farmers there now, which is I think really exciting. Like the Jackson brothers, in Tipperary, Jackson brothers, two twin brothers, farming, organically. It gives you a lot of hope for farming. It really does.
I think one of the things that really struck a chord with people, and there's no doubt it has, because the sales speak for themselves, is the level of transparency and the level of detail that you provide on each of the farmers.
We have to.
Yeah. Well,
we have to.
It's not something that's been done to the level that it's been done before. I mean, it's...
No, but it's deliberate. It's deliberate. You wouldn't believe me otherwise. We have to prove it. We're starting from -10 on the Richter scale of credibility. We have to prove it.
That brings me to one question which Tina has asked. She said, how can you prove the difference if the casks are different for different whiskey?
Well, that's a very interesting point. They're not. Because what we did is we have put every single farm origin, which produces more or less 200 barrels per farm. All right.
Yeah.
And we've put from day one, every farm goes into the same profile of wood.
Okay.
All right. And that's split between American oak and French oak, fundamentally. Virgin oak, French, virgin oak, American for color. First fill French, first fill American. First fill American for roundness and caramel. First fill French for spice and sophistication. VDN for sweetness. And then a little 5% goes into what we call exotic wood, which is oak from different forests and different origins, which has some interesting contributions. So every farm goes into the same proportions. So if we took the whole 200 barrels of each farm and put them together, then every single farm origin is identical in wood profile. So that's the basis. Okay. So we've gone to that degree of attention to detail.
Okay. One thing I noticed about the bottle that you'd had on the Bruichladdich bottles was there's no little proverb or saying like you had on you didn't have a clock and a coin on the back of the Waterford bottle. Perhaps you want to share what that means to our listeners.
I couldn't possibly. Yeah.
Well, the polite version.
Well, you're the Gaelic speaker, not me.
So I think it translates politely into the real deal, or
yes,
or the dog's bollocks. So, which is the
Well, so the funny thing was, we had a flag flying with that on it. Yeah. And it was there for about 5 years before anybody realised what it said.
Okay. Yeah, I was hoping to see it on these bottles, but maybe in future.
No.
Maybe in future. Another question that I had is, and this will be an interesting one, is have you ever considered joining the Irish Whisky Association? If yes, why? And if not, why?
Not really. My experiences with the Scottish Whisky Association were, the thing is, in Scotland, the Scottish Whisky Association is a two-purpose thing. One is it's a regulator, but it's also an agitator for a lobbyist. So it's on the one hand, it's a lobbyist, and the other, it's a regulator. Okay. I talk about poacher, gamekeeper, all in one hat. So it's run by the big guys for the big guys. They make the rules. They change the rules when they want to change the rules. I refer anybody to the Cardew debacle, and I think that's just not healthy. It's like as you saw in the banking crisis, putting banks in charge of their own. It's not healthy. It's not good. It's like putting the betting industry in charge of betting advertising. It's not good. Fundamentally, I have, as a regulator, fine. As a lobbyist, well, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Under one hat, not so sure.
Okay.
So coming to Ireland, where at the time there even wasn't that anything even was an IWA. It's not funded the same way. It's a different structure. It doesn't really have any power. That's further up.
So it is a lobbying body in essence.
Well, I'm not really sure what it is. It's two ladies and a fax machine, from what I understand. Okay. I've not had no one's come to me and asked me, no one said, oh, look, we'd like you to come and be a member or anything. No, I do my own thing. I don't need anybody to tell me how to run our project. I know what I'm doing. I'm just getting, head down and doing our own thing. I did go to the Ministry of Agriculture at the beginning when I could see that there was some, how should we say it, overzealous enthusiasm with labeling. And I said, look, I can, if you want to know how this all works, I'm very happy to tell you. Yeah. But no one ever asked me for any more.
Oh,
I've said, look, I know how the industry works. If you want an inside thing, I can very happily, But no, I think that there are various vested interests that would quite like to maintain a slightly grey area for their own interests. Well, fair enough.
What are the other big differences? The other big differences. Sorry, what are the other big differences then between doing business in Scotland and doing business in Ireland?
Doing business,
apart from the cost.
Well, no. I mean, I don't. There are. I've really enjoyed every minute of it. Let me tell you that. Some really engaging people that I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed working with. Bureaucratically, there's been a few awkwardnesses, where I think the regulators are learning about the whiskey industry, concurrently, and it's slightly frustrating when you sort of know a bit more and they don't, and it's playing catch up a bit. Yeah. That's slightly frustrating. But no, I've loved every minute of it. It's been really refreshing. I tell you what. Do you know that film, The Mission?
Yes.
That film, The Mission, about the Jesuit priests in Brazil.
Yeah.
And Robert De Niro kills his brother in a duel over a woman, a crime of passion. And so he goes to a monastery and converts to becoming a priest. And his penance is to drag all his armor up this, mountain. And then when he gets to the top of the mountain, he cuts the rope and it all falls away and he's done his penance. That's sort of how I feel about being in Ireland. There's no baggage. It's been really engaging, enthusiastic, intelligent, inspiring people. I've loved every minute.
Excellent. And do you spend most of your time home in Islay, or do you travel over frequently, or how are you? Obviously, things are a bit restricted.
Well, I can't travel.
Yeah. Unless you're secretly coming down, but yeah.
Well, I get a boat across. Yeah. I have a little farm here with some Black Highlanders, so this is really where I like to be. But otherwise, I normally come to Waterford once a month for a week, but I haven't been able to do that since the shutdown.
Yeah. Well, we've been down a couple of times to visit you, and we had a great chat there with Ned and Megan the last time we were down. So, I mean, even it's an industrial unit, but it's a very for
Oh, it is.
family friendly, or kind of atmosphere in the
Oh,
place as well.
you cannot mistake it. It is not a Bruichladdich. It is not a Hebridean distillery that you fall in love with that takes your soul. No, this is Formula One. This is technically superb. It is a distillery to be in awe of. You can't. I can't love it. I'm in awe of it. We call it the facilitator. Amongst ourselves, because it allows us to interpret this barley, for a number of reasons through, the diligence of Diageo in setting it up. We just reinterpreted it, for a different purpose. But no, you can't love it. You're in awe of it.
Yeah, it's not a thing of beauty, but yes,
wow.
You are. I mean, it's like a skyscraper.
Yeah.
It's like
it hums.
Yeah.
It hums. It's like wow. It's like going to. It's like I say. It's like going to Formula One garage. Geez, it's shiny. It's sparkly. It's very impressive. But love? No, I'll never love it. Fully in awe of it, but not love. No.
At the moment, so the capacity at the moment is about 1 million liters a year. You could go considerably higher with a little bit of expansion.
Oh yeah, we've got plenty of space. Space is not our problem at all. It's embarrassing the amount of space we've got there. But no. To do more, we'd need more stills, more pot stills, or we have a column still, but we don't use it. That's sitting there.
I mean, you have all the latest gadgets. You've reverse osmosis capabilities there and everything. Yeah.
Reverse osmosis?
I thought that you have some reverse osmosis equipment in there as well.
No, we got sort of there's evaporators. Yeah. Okay. If that's what you mean by the evaporators.
Yes, yeah. Okay. One other question, and I know this.
But the evaporators is connected to the column still, and it was used by Diageo to de-alkalize Guinness.
So that's not
we don't use that. No, we don't use it. It's a whopping great piece of very, very fancy, but we don't need to use it. So no, it sits there. In fact, it's what you see when you look through the window.
Yeah. One quick. I mean, this is, and given your comments of what you've said before on pot still Irish whiskey, it's unlikely you're ever going to produce any, is it?
Yeah.
No. What about using other grains?
Nope.
Oats and
rye. Apart from old, barley is the trick. That's where it all is. So barley is what interests me. So what we have done is with the help of Minch again is take 5 grams of seed from a library of old varieties and propagated them over the last 3 years into a volume that's large enough to malt and to distill. So these heritage varieties, we believe, will demonstrate a complete flavor profile, because modern barley varieties are genetically too close together, and they were never bred for flavor. They were bred for yield and efficiency. Yeah. So if you want to find major barley flavor differences that are not attributable to the terroir, but actually the variety, you've got to go back before the 60s. So we've been propagating Hunter, which comes from 1950, Goldthorpe from 1900, and Old Irish, which is the sort of original indigenous variety that sort of grew everywhere in the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Well, we did a piece in the last issue about the heritage grains, and I have to say that the work done by Minch is phenomenal in terms of getting whole fields out of single grains of barley almost. So
there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. You've got to take 5 grams, and grow it and look after it, and then harvest it, and then resow, So it's quite a long-term ordeal, and it's not cheap. There's a reason why these varieties were bypassed. It's because they yielded a third of what modern barley does today. So the argument is, why do it then? Well, it's going to cost us a fortune to do it. It's incredibly susceptible to the weather. If you get any more wind and rain, it's going to be a big problem for those heritage varieties. But the flavor inherent in the flavor compounds of those original varieties is very, very interesting. And so our longer term vision is now is well, which of those flavors can we breed instead of breeding barley that has been done over the last 40 years for yield? Can we breed it for flavor? Because it never was. So it's opened a whole new avenue of work for us to look at. Have the data.
It's like the modern tomato has no flavor, whereas 20 years ago there were flavors. I'm sure there's analogies there, but a quick question in here about will we ever see peated or a turf release?
No, I couldn't possibly say.
Okay. All right. Could you just give us your overview of how you see the Irish whiskey market, where you see it going, what needs to change, and how you're going to develop the business for yourselves going forward?
The Irish whiskey market. I think I've said this before. There's a huge amount of enthusiasm out there. There's a fair amount of naivety. There's an equal amount of naughtiness. It's as you'd expect. Anyway, I think it's early days. You've got people I really respect, like William Grant, Tullamore. You've got a variety of smaller producers. I hope that enthusiasm will last the course, and the finances are there to allow it to develop and to evolve. That's building a distillery is one thing, running it is another, bringing it to market is another. It's these guys are heroes in doing it. People have no idea of the limb that you have to go out on to make this happen. It all looks terribly romantic and fun and everything, and yes, there are dreamers, and yes, you do in some cases have to be a dreamer, but above all you've got to be a pragmatist here, because the time involved, the money involved, it's not for the faint-hearted. I can tell you that.
It's one thing buying the equipment and another one running. I have my private jet on the runway and I haven't ever been in it. Not yet. But look, Mark, I just want to congratulate you on doing what and delivering on what you set out to deliver. Can you give us any inkling of? I was speaking to your colleagues earlier, and they were saying we could see 20 releases this year. Is that about right?
Well, part of, as I said, these single farms are a stepping stone to a bigger goal.
Yeah.
But yes, we've had to rush out or bring forward, should I say, 2 new bottlings. The Rath Eden was never meant to be available, and that was destined for somewhere else. We had to redirect it to keep people happy in the home market.
Yeah.
So with the single farms, as I said, 200 barrels, that's the equivalent of 8,000 cases. That's a not insignificant sum per farm. So the first bottlings of Banno and Ballycalcavan, edition 1.1.
Yeah.
So those have gone. So the next bottling, which is happening this week, it's happening today, is 1.2.
Yeah.
It's a second bottling. It's a little bit older, a few months older. So that'd be interesting, just to see if there's a difference there to be seen, progression. But the thing is, unlike with Bruichladdich, where we never distilled enough at the beginning, this time we have. So we can come back to that initial 2015 harvest again and again and again to see how it evolves. Remember, this is only not even 4 years old.
Yeah.
So this is the youngest it's ever gonna be. The mistake we made at Bruichladdich was we didn't distill it enough. We hit the same vintages again and again and again. It never got beyond that young age because we just didn't have enough. Right. So I rectified that. Here we do. So this is the youngest it's ever be. It's only going to get older, more sophisticated, more complex, more compelling as time goes by. And we're interested to see how that evolves. We would hope you might be interested too. So we'll be able to revisit, reprise Bannow Island, Rath Eden over several years and watch it evolve and see before we even go to a different vintage. Oh, but then of course, hey, as you've seen on that chart, you've got vintage differences, harvest differences. So let's start playing across vintages as well. The permutations are extraordinary. So poor old Ned has got this extraordinary library of component spirits. We talk about 40 farms a year. We've done in total 103 since we started.
Okay.
So we've got 103 terroirs to play with, divided between those different barrel types that I described. So the permutation, it's like a chef going to a kitchen and opening the cupboard, and then all this stuff falling out. It's an extraordinary permutations we have available, and we're just very interested to see how it devolves and develops. And we like, we acknowledge that this isn't for everybody. I've said this all along. This is not for everybody. Yeah. Some people are just very happy with their usual. Fine. Give me a break. This is for people that rejoice in individuality, are interested in how whiskey is made. They want to know what goes on, and they're intrigued to see. And if that means smelling whiskies again and again and again to enjoy that wonderful aroma, well, that's what it's about. That's what it's all about. And to argue and debate. And when I saw at Bruichladdich 2 farmers arguing about their respective spirits made from barley that they'd both grown, that's when you're on to something. When these guys are debating terroir. If you said, "Are you debating terroir?" They say, "You what?" But that's what they're doing. And that's what I think the pleasure for us as whiskey fans is, to be able to discuss and debate the nuances and subtleties of these different spirits instead of drinking the same old. Yeah. I mean that's just me. That's if you're going to distill this stuff, you might as well make it interesting.
Yeah, well, you've certainly done that, Mark. I mean, I have to commend you on one, having the foresight to even look into this area, and secondly to the resilience, if you like, to actually carry it through. But I'm sure. Look, I know there are many doubters. There are many doubters, and there are bound to be. But you've stuck to your gut, and you have said from day one it's not for everybody. Yeah. But
no. It's not. We're not forcing anybody to say, "Well, this is." We're intrigued. I mean, we're really pleased to share what we've learned and what we are learning with whoever wants to see. And I think, what I think is startling is, we know this is a special project. We know that. Yeah. We've known it all along. It's a landmark project, not just, and again, you lose me of arrogance, not just Irish whiskey, but single malt whiskey full stop. This is a game changer. Yeah. And you don't have to like it, you don't have to follow it, but it is a game changer. No one can deny that.
Yeah. Mark, look, thank you very, very much for being a guest on our show. It's been a real honor to have you on board. We've been
Your pleasure, man.
fascinated from day one with what you've been doing down there. For some reason,
whiskey is for drinking. Yeah.
Well,
it's for
Peter
drinking.
White,
it's for enjoying.
Peter White is partly to blame for our introduction, but look, I've really enjoyed your journey. I'm sure it's only just beginning. I know that you've struck a real chord with people, and be fascinated to see what direction you follow and what surprises you have around the corner for us.
Well,
sure.
yeah.
And
Watch
don't
this
stop
space.
being a renegade, because we need people like yourself on board. So thank you very much for your time.
Well,
Appreciate it, and wish you well.
Iconoclastic wishes. Yes, exactly. Well, thank you very much, Sir Justin. Thank you for listening to us and from an early stage understanding what. Oh shit! It's all gone. I'm gonna have to have some more.
I have another bottle here.
See, that's what it's about. It's about drinking whiskey. That's what it's about. Yeah. So enjoy. Oh, I got the wrong bottle. There you go.
Don't want to mix the two.
So Slange, boys. Exactly.
Slange, thank you very much.
Mix the farms. It's really interesting.
I'll give that a go actually later. Listen, take care. Thank you very much.
And you too, man. Okay. Bye-bye.
Wow. Well, that was certainly very interesting. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Fascinating character. I really admire his focus. It's been, and the whiskey, the whiskey is still young, and I think it is very interesting. And they're definitely not what I expected, to be honest with you, coming out of that distillery. So, listen, if you've enjoyed the show will be available for download on Spotify, Google Podcasts, various other different platforms. It's also going up on our YouTube channel. If you have any comments or anything that you'd like to ask, or any ways you think we can improve the show, please let us know. We'd be delighted to listen. And thank you very much for it. And next week, actually, I don't know, should I announce the winner of the guest for next week? Yeah, we have a very interesting guest next week. We'll be announcing it tomorrow. If you look on our YouTube channel, it's somebody familiar with everybody, but we're delighted to have some fantastic guests on board. Thank you for your support, tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Take care, stay safe, and Sláinte.